Do you know what it feels like when the person you gave everything to looks you straight in the eyes and calls you a thief? When your own flesh and blood decides that humiliating you in front of everyone will make their special day even more unforgettable. If you stay until the end of this story, you'll understand why some wounds never heal, why some actions are never forgiven, and why, sometimes, justice needs the firm hand of a mother. This isn't about revenge, it's about consequences. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Some of you might see yourselves in this story, and others might recognize someone they know. Either way, I hope it makes you think twice about the marks we leave on the hearts of those who love us most. My name's Vivian Cole, I'm 58, and I thought by now, I'd seen just about everything. 2 failed marriages behind me, a thriving business I built from the ground up, 3 grown kids, and enough chapters in my life to write a library's worth of memoirs. I've always been the rock-solid, dependable, always there. Or at least, that's the story I told myself. The morning Juliana got married, the world was picture-perfect. Classic October sunshine poured through the sheer curtains of her bridal suite at the Rosewood Hotel in Napa, lighting up the beautiful chaos. Blush pink gowns draped like silk ghosts from every hook, and makeup bags spilled across tables like tiny explosions of color. "Mom, can you help me with this?" Her voice cut through the air, sharp in a way I'd grown used to over the past year. The wedding had turned my sweet girl into someone sharp-edged and polished like glass, demanding, harsh, all about the optics. I blamed the pressure, her soon-to-be husband Brandon's ultra-wealthy family, the impossible standards women face. I made excuses because that's what mothers do. I walked over to her, sitting at the vanity, her reflection fragmented in 3 mirrors. At 32, Juliana looked like a goddess, all my features but with her father's height and bold presence. Her hair was sculpted into a dramatic updo, a few soft strands falling loose around the face that once graced several regional magazine covers before she traded modeling for law school. "This clasp is impossible," she muttered, irritated, holding up the diamond pendant gifted by Brandon's mother. "And Amber's been locked in the bathroom forever." I took the necklace gently, our fingers touching for just a second, cool and distant. "It's her first time being maid of honor," I said, fastening the clasp. "Cut her some slack." Juliana caught my eye in the mirror and said flatly, "I didn't ask for commentary, Mom, just fix the necklace." I bit back the words that nearly slipped out and focused on fastening the tiny platinum clasp. Today wasn't the time to stir the pot. I'd already poured $22,000 into this wedding straight from my retirement savings, not that Juliana knew. Since her dad, my ex, Stephen, claimed he suddenly had liquidity problems right when it was time to pitch in. That's the same Stephen who'd be proudly walking her down the aisle in a tailored Tom Ford suit, looking every inch the polished investment banker who'd ditched me for his assistant a decade and a half ago. "There," I said softly as I finished the clasp. "You look stunning." She didn't respond, just flipped open a velvet box to reveal sapphire earrings that stole my breath. "Brandon's grandmother lent me these," she said, her voice casual, almost smug. "They're worth more than your house." That jab hit its mark, my modest 3-bedroom in Oakland where I raised all 3 of my kids after Stephen walked hard clearly become something Juliana was embarrassed by ever since she started living in Brandon's swanky Pacific Heights condo. My son Lucas was still at home, grinding through grad school, and Samantha had only recently moved out. "Something borrowed and blue all in one," I said, keeping my tone even. "They're gorgeous." Just then, Samantha blew into the room, already dressed in her bridesmaid gown, phone glued to her hand as usual. At 25, she couldn't have been more different from Juliana, petite, blonde like me, and always halfway tuned out thanks to her social media influencer life. "Mom, you're not dressed yet?" she asked, scanning my silk robe with clear judgment. "The photographer wants family shots in 40 minutes. I'm aware of the schedule, Samantha," I replied, reminding myself that I'd coordinated this entire circus while Juliana focused on whatever she meant by creative direction. "She's been helping me," Juliana said, tossing me a rare compliment that briefly warmed me until she added, "Though honestly, we should have just hired a real stylist like I wanted." That stung more than I let on, considering I'd saved her $1,200 by doing her hair and makeup myself, thanks to the 20 years I'd spent building my own successful beauty boutique. Apparently, that still didn't count as professional. I slipped into the adjoining room to get dressed, where my silvery blue Mother Vubard gown sleek column dress that cost more than my first car waited on its hanger. As I got ready, I could hear Juliana and Samantha chatting in the next room, their voices floating in and out, filled with names I didn't recognize and party stories I hadn't been part of. That old, dull ache of being left out crept into my chest. Last Christmas, while I was elbow-deep in the holiday rush at the boutique, Stephen had whisked them off to Aspen. His new wife, Sabrina, 15 years younger, and desperate to play perfect, stepmom had plastered Instagram with pictures of their happy blended holiday. There were my daughters, grinning arm in arm with Stephen and Sabrina, like they'd been some picture-perfect family all along. Lucas had agreed to be there, but it was clear he felt out of place, his discomfort written all over him. Meanwhile, my daughters had come back from Aspen dripping in designer ski gear, trading stories with each other like I didn't exist in that version of their lives. I finished my makeup soft, polished, age-appropriate and stepped back into the main suite, just as Amber finally emerged from the bathroom. The rest of the bridesmaids had arrived too, all 6 of them buzzing with energy, voices overlapping as a photographer snapped candid shots of their excitement. I stayed on the sidelines, quietly watching Juliana take center stage, surrounded by women who adored her. No matter the strain between us, I couldn't help the pride that swelled in me. She looked radiant. Mrs. Cole, a hotel staffer, appeared beside me. The groom's mother is asking for the bride. I'll talk to Victoria, I replied, secretly grateful to be handed something to do. Juliana still getting ready. Outside in the hallway stood Victoria Johnson, pristine in her tailored Chanel suit, every inch of her controlled and elegant, not a single silver strand of hair out of place. At 62, she could have passed for 50, the result of high-end skincare, personal trainers, and a fortune that made my own success feel like pocket change. Her husband's tech company had gone public while Brandon was still in college, launching them into another stratosphere of wealth. "Vivian," she said with that polished smile of hers, "how is our bride?" Our bride, as if Juliana now belonged to both of us equally. "She's doing great, just putting on the finishing touches," I answered, with the same bland civility. "The earrings were a beautiful touch. They've been in our family for 4 generations, she said, emphasizing our family just enough to remind me I'd always be standing outside that particular circle. "I hope Juliana has them secure. They're insured, of course, but irreplaceable." I watched her put them on myself. I lied smoothly, though I hadn't. "They look incredible on her." Victoria gave a satisfied nod. "Charles just wanted to make sure we're on track. The quartet is playing, and guests are starting to arrive." "We're right on schedule," I replied, resisting the urge to click my heels. 20 more minutes. Once she drifted away down the hallway like royalty returning to court, I stepped back into the suite. Now buzzing with last-minute chaos, Juliana was being gently positioned near the window, where golden light spilled across her, and her assistant knelt, arranging the folds of her Varawang gown, a custom piece that had taken 3 fittings in Manhattan to get just right. "Mom," Juliana called out, and for the first time that day, her voice sounded small, almost fragile, like the child she used to be. "How do I look?" And in that instant, I saw her at 5, spinning in the princess dress I'd stitched by hand. I saw her at 16, heart pounding before her first big date. At 22, standing in her cap and gown, eyes searching mine for reassurance. "Like a dream," I said, my voice catching in my throat. "You look absolutely perfect." For a brief second, something shifted in her face, something tender, maybe grateful, maybe just the ghost of the love we once moved so easily in before that polished, practiced expression slid back into place. "Good now, can you go check on Dad and make sure he's not already halfway too drunk before the ceremony? You know how he gets." And just like that, I was dismissed, handed a job like an assistant, tasked with managing the man who had walked out on us both. But I did it, because that's what moms do on wedding days. We bite our tongues, we smooth the rough edges, we keep the wheels turning quietly in the background. I found Stephen exactly where I figured he'd be, the hotel bar, but instead of a scotch, he was nursing a seltzer. He looked irritatingly good. The gray in his hair only made him more attractive, the years adding gravitas instead of where he stood when I approached, a leftover courtesy from his East Coast upbringing. "Vivian," he said with a warmth that almost felt real. Time and those hefty alimony checks had dulled the sharpest corners of our divorce. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," I replied, sliding onto the bar stool beside him and ordering a sparkling water, nervous about walking her down the aisle. Terrified, he said with a sheepish grin. I'll probably trip and take her down with me. She's ready, radiant, commanding, he chuckled. Wonder where she gets that from. Her father, I answered without missing a beat. He tilted his head in mock surrender. Fair enough. After a pause, he added, I know today hasn't been easy for you, Juliana, ... She can be a lot, she's just under a lot of pressure, I said, out of habit, my go-to excuse. She's spoiled, he corrected gently, and I own my part in that, but you've carried the weight of this wedding, and I doubt she's thanked you the way she should have. Before I could answer, lucasappeartall.com. His tux perfectly fitted his girlfriend Isabel, trailing close behind. My son, always, the diplomat, leaned in and kissed my cheek. Mom, they need you upstairs. Something about the veil. I rose without a word. Of course they did. Duty calls. Don't be late, Stephen. As I turned to go, I heard Lucas say to his father, be nice to Mom today. She's doing her best. My sweet boy. At least one of my children still saw me for who I was. What none of us knew then was that in under 2 hours, the entire day would implode. That the fragile grace I'd been holding together with trembling hands would be crushed. That everything I'd built, every ounce of love I'd given, with no strings attached, was about to be publicly destroyed in front of 300 wedding guests. Sand life would never look the same again. The ceremony swept by in a blur of white chiffon and polished smiles, like a scene I was watching from behind glass. I sat front row, yet felt miles away, alone in a sea of well-wishers, watching Stephen escort Juliana down the aisle. She looked like a dream, radiant and poised. Exactly how I'd always pictured she would be on this day, but what I hadn't pictured was the ache in my chest. The strange emptiness of realizing I was just a side character in a story I once helped write. Their vows were exchanged beneath an arch dripping in fresh blooms, the kind of floral extravagance that cost more than my first used Honda. And when the officiant declared them husband and wife, I clapped with such force my palms stung, determined to be the image of unwavering support, even as I felt myself dissolving into the background. At the cocktail hour, I floated through the crowd with the grace of long practice, thanking guests, deflecting sympathetic glances, keeping my game face intact. Across the patio, Sabrina, Stephen's newer, shinier model of a wife, stood in the center of a circle near the string quartet, glowing in her designer gown, glass raised in what looked suspiciously like a toast to her own triumph. I met her gaze, offered the tightest of smiles, and turned my back before the bitterness could rise. You're handling all this with impressive grace, Vivian, said a familiar voice, low and kind. I turned to see Charles Johnson, Brandon's father, handing me a fresh glass of champagne. Unlike Victoria, who glided through life like it was a high-stakes strategy game, Charles radiated an unforced warmth. 15 years of practice, I replied, accepting the drink. Divorce teaches you to develop some armor. He chuckled, his eyes creasing with something close to admiration. Still, most people wouldn't have the composure to sit and smile while their ex struts around with his new wife like it's prom night. I shrugged, trying to seem unfazed. Ancient history, but his gaze didn't waver. Brandon's told me how much he respects you. Says you're the glue that holds your whole family together while everyone else takes the spotlight. That landed harder than I expected after so many years of being unseen. Being acknowledged felt strange, almost vulnerable. I didn't get a chance to answer before the wedding planner began corralling guests toward the reception hall, and Charles was whisked off by Victoria like a piece on her game board. Inside, the room sparkled crystal silver, and cascading orchids catching the light like a dream sequence. I was seated at the family table between Lucas and Samantha, while Stephen and Sabrina sat directly across from us like the lead actors in a romantic drama I hadn't auditioned for. Juliana and Brandon were perched at their own table under a spotlight, the picture of elegance and happily ever after. Dinner unfolded around me, full of conversation I wasn't quite part of, and a menu I barely noticed. Samantha, ever the influencer, spent the evening curating moments for her followers. Lucas and Isabel chatted with Charles about some new tech trend I didn't recognize. Stephen told stories that made Sabrina laugh too loud, her manicured hand never leaving his arm. The sapphires were the perfect choice, Victoria said as dessert arrived, her voice as smooth as silk. They matched Juliana's coloring beautifully. They're exquisite, I replied, summoning a warmth I didn't feel. Very generous of your mother to share such treasured pieces. Victoria's smile thinned ever so slightly. Mother Johnson doesn't lend those out easily. They've never left the family before. The message was loud and clear. Juliana belonged to their family now. I swallowed the retort rising in my throat just as the DJ took the mic and announced it was time for toasts. Dot Stevens stood up first, champagne flute in hand, delivering a speech that was effortlessly charming, bringing tears to eyes all around the room. To my surprise, he even gave me a respectful nod, crediting Juliana's strength and drive to her mother, a rare acknowledgement from a man who had spent years minimizing everything I did. Then, it was my turn. I'd rehearsed the words for weeks, rewriting every sentence until it struck the right chord of emotion without overstepping. I spoke about Juliana's fierce spirit even as a child, how she'd always chased what she wanted with a fiery passion, and how proud I was of the woman she'd become. As I looked at her, I caught a flicker of something real in her face, like the layers had peeled back for a heartbeat, revealing the little girl who once curled up on my lap for bedtime stories, the teenager who wept into my arms after her first breakup. To Juliana and Brandon, I said, raising my glass, may your life together be filled with joy, growth, and the peace that comes from true partnership. I love you both. Applause followed, and from across the room Juliana mouthed, thank you. It was the kind of moment you hold on to when everything else starts to fall apart. After dinner, the dancing began. Stephen took Juliana's hand and led her across the floor to the Way You Look Tonight, moving gracefully, like they'd practiced for years, a painful reminder that he'd always been the fun parent, the one who taught her to waltz while I took care of permission slips and orthodontist appointments. I stood back, smiling through the dull, familiar ache. May I? Lucas appeared beside me, offering his hand. My son, the one who always saw straight through me. Aren't you supposed to be dancing with the maid of honor? I teased as we stepped onto the dance floor. Already checked that box, he replied, flashing a grin. Now I'm dancing with the most beautiful woman here. We moved together in easy silence until he leaned closer, his voice lower. I know Juliana hasn't made this easy, but in her own way, I think she does appreciate you. Her ways getting harder and harder to decipher. I murmured, she's trying to fit into Brandon's world. Lucas said gently, it doesn't excuse it, but I think she's scared she won't measure up. When the song ended, I slipped away, needing to catch my breath. The hallway outside the reception was quiet and still, the music muffled by the thick doors. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, trying to steady myself. Mrs. Cole, a hotel staffer, approached me, face tight with urgency. Ms. Johnson has requested you in the bridal suite right away. I followed him up the sweeping staircase to the suite where we'd all gotten ready earlier. The door slightly open, voices raised behind it. I stepped inside to find Juliana, Victoria, and the wedding planner locked in a tense exchange. Mom, finally, Juliana snapped, her cheeks flushed, whether from anger or too much champagne. I couldn't tell. Maybe you can explain this. Explain what? I asked, looking from one woman to the next, trying to make sense of the room's thick tension. Victoria's voice was crisp and cutting. The sapphire earrings, they're missing, I repeated, stunned. But you had them on during the ceremony. I took them off before the reception. Juliana jumped in. The posts were digging into my ears. I left them right here. She jabbed a finger toward the empty vanity like it was a crime scene. And now they're gone. Maybe they got moved during cleanup, I offered, trying to keep things calm. The wedding planner shook her head. We haven't touched anything in here since before the ceremony, so who's been in the room? I asked, staying logical even as my pulse kicked up. That's what we're looking into, Victoria replied coolly, her eyes narrowing. The hotel is checking their keycard records. Something in her voice made my skin crawl. Wait, I said slowly, you don't think you were here right before the ceremony? Juliana cut in. You came to fix my veil. I stared at her, not wanting to believe what I was hearing. Juliana, what exactly are you accusing me of? But deep down, I already knew. God help me. I saw it coming like a wave I couldn't outrun. You've always been resentful, she said, her voice rising. Jealous of Dad's career, jealous of the way Brandon's family has welcomed me. That's not true, I said quickly, but she was already on a roll. And now these priceless earrings disappear, and the only person who was alone in this room ... was you. The words hit me like a slap. I looked around Juliana, glaring. Victoria watching with ice in her eyes, the planner clearly wishing she could disappear. You honestly think I stole them? I asked, barely able to breathe. Your own mother? I don't know what to think, Juliana answered, but her tones said she absolutely did. They were here. Now they're not. And you're the one always talking about your money problems, about dipping into your retirement, about how you shouldn't have had to pay for this wedding. The words flew from me before I could stop them. Because you did ask me to pay for it. And there it is, Juliana snapped, her face twisted with anger. The victim routine. It's always about money with you, Mrs. Cole, Victoria said smoothly, like she was hosting a cocktail hour. Perhaps you could empty your evening bag. It might help ease everyone's mind. I stared at her, too stunned to respond. You want me to dump out my purse like I'm shoplifting at the mall? It would put the matter to rest quickly, she said, voice calm, eyes cold as ice. If you have nothing to hide. The words weren't spoken, but they hung thick in the air between us. I looked at Juliana, waiting for her to laugh it off, to step in and shut this insanity down. But her face was locked in that rigid, unyielding expression I'd seen so many times growing up, the one she wore whenever she'd made up her mind and refused to budge. Facts be damned. Fine, I said sharply, flipping open my evening clutch, a simple silver bag I'd had for years. Here, have at it. I dumped it out onto the nearest table. Lipstick, compact phone, hotel key, a couple tissues, and a crumpled 20 bill. Satisfied, Victoria leaned over like a forensic tech on a crime show, scanning the items with cool detachment. What about your other bag? She asked. The one you had earlier today. This is the only one I brought to the reception, I replied, heat rising in my cheeks. But you had a bigger bag this morning, Juliana pressed, relentless. The blue one, which is locked in my hotel room, I said, jaw tight. With everything else I brought. Then you won't mind if we check your room, she said smoothly, as if it was the most normal thing in the world for a daughter to demand. Something inside me cracked. Actually, I do mind, I said, standing straighter. This is ridiculous, Juliana. I'm your mother, not some stranger off the street you get to treat like a criminal. Mom, no one's accusing you, she said quickly. Aren't you? I shot back. Isn't that exactly what's happening here? The earrings go missing, and suddenly you're convinced I pocketed them. The wedding planner looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. Maybe I should give you all a moment. No, stay, Juliana said, her voice sharp. We might need a witness. Like this was a courtroom instead of her wedding day, like I was no longer her mother but a defendant on trial. This is insane, I said, pulling myself together as best I could. I'm going back to the reception. And when you're ready to apologize for accusing me of stealing, you know where to find me. I turned toward the door, but Juliana stepped in front of me. You're not leaving until we figure this out. Those earrings are worth over $100,000, Mom. The number dropped like a hammer, less a fact than a declaration of how little she thought of me, how easily she believed I'd trade love for a price tag. Move, Juliana, I said, my voice leveled though my hands trembled. Not until the door swung open, cutting her off, and Samantha walked in, still scrolling her phone. There you are. Brandon's looking all over. She froze, finally catching the heavy silence. What's going on? Your mom won't let us search her room for Grandmother Johnson's earrings, Juliana said, as if the words made any kind of sense. Samantha's eyes widened. Wait, the sapphires, they're gone. Then she turned to me, face shifting from confusion to something else, something that hurt more than I can explain. Mom, you didn't. That was the moment it finally landed. This wasn't just Juliana turning on me. Both of my daughters, the girls I had carried, raised, nursed through fevers and heartbreaks, stood by through every scraped knee and broken dream, actually thought I was capable of stealing me, their mother. I see, I said softly, the words coming from a place so raw it almost felt calm. The pain was sharp and strange, cutting so deep it left behind a numb, brutal clarity. Move, Juliana, I'm leaving. Walking out only makes you look more guilty, she snapped, like she was the prosecutor, and I was some stranger on trial. I let out a laugh, brittle, empty. Guilty to who? You. You've already decided I'm guilty. No questions, no hesitation, not even a shadow of doubt. Mrs. Cole, Victoria began, but I silenced her with a hand. No, I've heard all I need to. I stood tall, locked eyes with my daughter, and said, I didn't take those earrings. I would never steal from you. But today, Juliana, you've taken something from me that can't ever be replaced. I stepped toward the door, and this time, she didn't try to stop me, but her words hit like a slap. If you walk out now, don't bother coming back. You're not part of this family anymore. I paused, hand on the knob, turned just once. Family doesn't treat each other like this. Maybe remember that. When those earrings show up, I left with my back straight and chin high, my body on autopilot as I moved down the quiet hallway and descended the grand staircase like I wasn't even part of the world anymore. The reception below was still roaring guests, laughing, dancing, swaying under the lights like nothing had changed. The band was playing some forgettable pop song, and the champagne was still being poured like liquid celebration. I drifted through the room, invisible, like a ghost. No one noticed. Or so I thought, until someone grabbed my arm. Vivian, Stephen said, his voice full of concern. What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. I met his gaze, and for half a second, I considered handing it off, letting him deal with the daughters he'd always managed to charm so easily. But no, this was mine to carry now. I'm fine, I said, gently pulling away. Just a headache, heading to my room. But they haven't cut the cake yet, he said, surprised. Juliana will be upset if you miss it. I smiled, but there was nothing sweet in it. I think Juliana will survive without me. My voice cracked with bitterness. Good night, Stephen. I walked away before he could follow, through the glittering lobby and into the elevator. In my room, I kicked off the heels that had been killing me for hours and sank onto the edge of the bed, too hollowed out to even cry. The woman staring back at me in the mirror was unfamiliar, flawless makeup, elegant dress, dead behind the eyes. Then, a soft knock at the door. My heart lifted for one wild, reckless second. Maybe it was Juliana. Maybe she realized. Maybe she came to apologize. But it was Lucas standing there in the hallway, worry written all over his face. Mom, what's going on? Dad said you looked upset. I paused for only a second before stepping aside and letting him in. If anyone deserved honesty, it was my son, the one who's always seen through the noise to the heart of me. Juliana accused me of stealing the sapphire earrings. I said flatly, no softening, no build-up. His face went pale, eyes wide. What? That's ridiculous. Not to your sisters. Apparently, Samantha pretty much backed her up. Lucas dropped into the chair near the window, running his hands through his hair like he was trying to process a different language. They can't actually believe that. They do. I sat on the edge of the bed across from him. Victoria Johnson asked me to dump out my purse. Juliana wanted to have my room searched. Jesus Christ, Lucas muttered, staring at the floor. What the hell is wrong with them? So where are the earrings now? Still missing, I said. But I've already been cast as the villain. According to Juliana, I'm not family anymore. Lucas winced, like the words had physically hit him. She didn't mean that. She's just drunk and overwhelmed. No, she meant every word. And strangely, I felt steady. Hollowed out, but steady. And you know what? For the first time since she was born, I'm not going to excuse it or clean up her mess. I'm done playing that role. Mom, come on, he said, voice cracking a little. Lucas, look at me. I reached for his hand. I've spent my entire adult life molding myself into what other people needed. Stephen's cooperative ex, my kid's emotional safety net, the woman who fades into the background so everyone else can shine. And today, my own daughter accused me of being a thief and a liar in front of people who already think I don't belong. That breaks something you don't just glue back together. There has to be a way through this, he whispered, but the doubt was already in his eyes. Maybe she'll find the earrings and apologize. And if she does, I'll accept it, I said, giving his hand a squeeze. But nothing will go back to what it was. I looked at him, really looked. You should go. Isabel's probably wondering where you are. I'm not leaving you alone like this. I'm okay, sweetheart, really. I managed a small smile. I'm going to take a hot bath, order some room service, and sleep like I haven't in weeks. Tomorrow's a fresh start. He hesitated at the door, caught between loyalty and guilt. Promise, you'll call me if you need anything. I promise. I walked him out, then stood there for a second longer. I love you, Lucas. I'm proud of the man you've become. After he left, I did exactly what I said I would. I ran a bath, ordered a club sandwich and a pot of tea, slipped into my softest pajamas. I wasn't going to flee in the middle of the night like some disgraced character in a dusty novel. I'd face whatever came next with my head held high. As I crawled into bed, the cool sheets felt like a reset. A line drawn between what had been and whatever was still to come. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Lucas. I love you. This will all make sense tomorrow. I turned off the phone without responding and placed it face down. Whatever tomorrow had in store, it could wait. Tonight, I needed to grieve the loss of something I hadn't realized was hanging by a thread: my daughter's trust, my place in the family I built from scratch, the belief that love could weather any storm. Sleep didn't come easy, but when it did, it hit hard, deep, dreamless, the kind that only follows a soul-level collapse. By the time morning light cracked through the curtains, something inside me had shifted. The ache was still there, but it had settled into something colder, sharper, more defined. The hurt had crystallized into resolve. I'd been broken, sure, but I'd forged something new from those pieces, stronger, tougher, and no longer willing to be collateral damage in my children's lives. I was in the shower when the phone started, going off non-stop, but I let it ring. Whatever mess had exploded at the post-wedding brunch I hadn't been invited to was no longer my problem. I took my time under the hot water, letting it rinse away yesterday's mascara, yesterday's heartbreak, yesterday's version of me. When I finally checked the phone, there were 17 missed calls and at least double that in texts from Lucas, from Stephen, from Samantha, not one from Juliana. I opened the latest message from Lucas. Mom, call me ASAP. They found the earrings. You need to hear this. I didn't reply. Instead, I dressed carefully: black slacks, crisp white blouse, every button and crease a layer of armor. I ordered coffee and sat by the window, watching the early sun stretch across the vineyard hills, waiting. The knock came soft, uncertain. I opened the door to find Lucas and Samantha standing there. Lucas tight-lipped, Samantha blotchy and tear-streaked. May we come in? He asked, polite, like I was a stranger. I said nothing, just stepped aside. They entered, Lucas sinking into the armchair while Samantha lingered, unsure. The earrings were in Victoria's purse, he said, cutting straight to it. A hotel staffer found them this morning while cleaning up the bridal suite. I see, I said, my voice flat, revealing none of the fire flaring quietly inside me. Mom, I'm so sorry, Samantha choked out, tears spilling again. I never should have thought, I never should have said, I raised a hand to stop her. What exactly happened? Lucas answered, when it became clear Samantha couldn't get through it. Apparently Victoria asked to look at the earrings before the ceremony, put them in her evening bag to keep them safe, and then forgot she'd switched to another purse before the reception. And the part where I got accused of stealing them? I asked, my voice calm but sharp. Juliana is horrified. Samantha jumped in. We all are. It was a huge mistake. A mistake, I repeated, testing the word like it was a foreign object in my mouth. That's what we're going with. Mom, please. Samantha stepped closer, hands reaching out like she could smooth this over. Juliana had too much champagne. She was overwhelmed. She wasn't thinking straight. No, I said evenly, cutting through her excuse. She was thinking exactly what she's always thought of me. That I'm petty, jealous, beneath her. That's what she's always thought. And the champagne didn't invent those beliefs, Samantha, it just stripped away her filter. That's not fair, Samantha murmured, her voice barely there. Isn't it? I shot back, locking eyes with her. You believed her, too. Without pause, without a shred of doubt, you looked at your own mother and saw a criminal. Samantha recoiled, like I'd slapped her. I was just, Everything happened so fast, I didn't know what to think. Stop. I didn't raise my voice, but the word hit like a hammer. I'm not here for excuses. I want you both to really hear me now. I paused, waiting until they were both fully present. Yesterday, my daughters accused me of stealing. I was asked to dump out my purse like some stranger shoplifting at a drugstore. I was told I wasn't family anymore. None of that can be unsaid, and none of it can be undone. What it can do is reveal exactly where I stand in this family, and I won't deny it anymore just to protect your feelings. Mom, Lucas started, but I cut him off. I raised you all to take ownership of your choices. Juliana made the choice to call me out publicly, without giving me even a moment of trust. Samantha, you made the choice to believe her without any proof. Choices have consequences. What kind of consequences? Samantha asked, her voice trembling. I'm checking out of this hotel today. I won't be joining you for brunch. When Juliana gets back from her honeymoon, she's welcome to reach out, but I won't be the one initiating contact. You can't just walk away from us, Samantha said, tears threatening again. I'm not walking away, I said, calm and firm. I'm setting boundaries. Something I should have done a long time ago. Lucas looked up. Juliana wants to apologize in person. She's downstairs, waiting. I gave a bitter half laugh. Of course, she is now that there's video proving I didn't do it. Now she's ready to make it right. Video. Samantha looked confused. Lucas nodded. The hotel has hallway cameras. This morning, once the earrings were found, they reviewed the footage. It clearly shows Victoria entering the suite alone before the reception. A chill ran through me. And if that footage didn't exist, if it had just been my word against everyone else's assumptions, they said nothing. Their silence was all the confirmation I needed. Tell Juliana I'm not ready to see her, I said at last. Maybe in a few weeks, once I've had a chance to breathe. Mom, please, Samantha begged, her eyes glassy. She's heartbroken. We all are. I'm sure you are, I said, gently but without backing down. But your pain doesn't erase mine. And right now, I need space. They left with hesitations, Samantha still sniveling. Lucas visibly torn while I quietly closed the door behind them and leaned against it, exhaling a breath that felt like it had been stuck in my chest for days. I thought finally being proven right would feel like justice, but all I felt was grief for what had shattered beyond repair. I packed slowly, deliberately, making sure not a single thing was left behind. As I zipped the last compartment of my suitcase, my phone buzzed again. Juliana's name lit up the screen, and I just stared at it, letting it ring until it went to voicemail. Her message played through the speaker. Mom, it's me. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. So wrong. Please come down so we can talk. I need to explain, to apologize face to face. Mom, please. I love you. Her voice cracked at the end, and for a flicker of a moment, my resolve started to slip until I remembered the look on her face when she said the words that had gutted me. You're not family anymore. I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. In the lobby, I kept my gaze straight ahead, passing by clusters of wedding guests nursing their coffee and hangovers, blissfully unaware of the storm that had raged just upstairs. The young woman at the front desk checked me out with cheerful efficiency, unaware of the weight behind every word. Did you enjoy your stay, Mrs. Cole? She asked, all polite professionalism. It was illuminating. I replied with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Outside, my Uber was already idling. As I slid my suitcase into the trunk, I glanced up and saw Juliana rushing across the lobby, her face blotchy with tears and panic. Our eyes met through the glass. She lifted her hand in a silent plea. I turned away, got in the car, and gave the driver my address. As we pulled away from the Rosewood Hotel, I didn't look back. That life was gone. What came next would be mine, to shape without the people who had proven how little they valued me. No matter the blood we shared. In my purse, the phone kept buzzing with texts I wouldn't read, calls I wouldn't return. Not today. Today was for quiet, for reckoning, for sitting with the wreckage and letting something new begin to rise from it. Tomorrow could have my answers. 6 months later, on a brisk spring morning, I stood in front of the bedroom mirror studying the woman who'd emerged from the wreckage. My hair, no longer colored to mask time, gleamed silver and bold. My face had sharpened not from pain, but purpose. I had shed weight, not in mourning, but through 3-mile runs at dawn, weightlifting sessions that left my muscles humming. My body wasn't a vessel for sacrifice anymore. It was a testament to intention. At exactly 9 a.m., the doorbell rang. Lucas, as punctual as ever. I opened the door to find him standing there, looking worn but determined. They're all here, he said, skipping formalities, just like you asked. I nodded, grabbing my coat and bag. Thank you for putting this together. He hesitated at the threshold. Are you absolutely sure? Once you say it, ... I've never been more certain of anything in my life. The ride to Stephen's house in Pacific Heights was quiet. Not a word spoken between us. Lucas was the only one I'd stayed in touch with during these past 6 months. And even that relationship had been reshaped by boundaries I'd drawn and he'd respectfully honored. He never pushed, never brought up his sisters unless it was absolutely necessary for today's meeting. Did you tell them why I wanted to see them? I asked as we pulled up to the house. Just that you had something important to share with everyone, he said, nothing more. Stephen's home, a sleek monument to glass, steel, and self-congratulation. Life he built with Sabrina after discarding ours stood before us like some altar to everything I'd never been, never offered, never represented. It felt almost poetic that this final reckoning would happen here. In the one place that had always made me feel small, they were already gathered in the living room, Stephen and Sabrina sitting side by side on a designer couch, Samantha looking uneasy on an ottoman, Juliana and Brandon standing near the fireplace. Their voices died the second I walked in. 6 months of radio silence, of ignored outreach, of apologies I refused to acknowledge had led to this moment. "Vivian," Stephen said, rising awkwardly like he couldn't decide whether to hug me or not. I made the choice easy, extending my hand for a firm, businesslike shake. "You look different." "Thank you," I replied evenly, whether it was meant as praise or not. I took the only chair positioned directly across from them, refusing Lucas's offer of coffee. "Thank you all for coming." "As if we had a choice," Juliana muttered, trying to sound casual, but the tightness around her eyes betrayed her. My daughter, still elegant, still composed, but thinner, paler, and carrying shadows beneath her eyes that concealer couldn't hide. Motherhood hadn't softened her the way I once imagined it might. "You've always had choices, Juliana," I said evenly. "We all do, and those choices have consequences." The room stilled. From my bag, I pulled out 5 matching envelopes, each one neatly labeled in my handwriting, and laid them out on the coffee table in front of me. 6 months ago, I was publicly accused of stealing at my own daughter's wedding, I said without emotion. I was humiliated, rejected, and informed I was no longer part of this family. Since then, I've had a lot of time to consider what family truly means and what it doesn't. "Mom, come on," Samantha cut in, her voice weary. "We've said, we're sorry 100 times. How long are you going to keep this going?" "This isn't punishment, Samantha. It's accountability." I gestured to the envelopes. "Please take the one with your name." They glanced at each other, tense and uncertain, before slowly reaching out to retrieve their envelopes. Only Lucas knew what was inside, and even he looked braced for impact. "Inside, you'll find legal documentation from my attorney," I said as they opened them. "I've sold my beauty boutique. After 27 years, I was approached by a luxury chain expanding on the West Coast and accepted their offer." "You sold the business?" Stephen asked, eyebrows raised. "Without telling any of us?" "Yes," I said calmly. "Just like you sold off your partnership shares 15 years ago without ever telling me. The difference is, I'm telling you the outcome directly." "But why?" Samantha asked, flipping through the papers with disbelief. "You loved that place." "I did," I said evenly. "But it served its purpose. It kept a roof over our heads when your father left. It paid for college, for the things you needed, for Juliana's wedding, and now, it's going to fund what comes next for me." "What future?" Juliana asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "My future in Provence," I replied. "I've bought a small villa near Aix. I'm moving next month." The look on their faces would have been almost funny under different circumstances, mouths open, stunned, silence. "France," Stephen blurted out. "You can't just pack up and move to France." "Actually, I can. My visa's in place, the sale is finalized, and I've been brushing up on my French every morning." "But what about us?" Samantha asked, gesturing vaguely toward her siblings. "That's the second half of what's in your envelopes," I said, keeping my tone measured. "You'll see, I've revised my will and updated the trust. The money from the boutique sale, and eventually the house, is going into a trust with Lucas as the sole trustee." Juliana's head jerked up. "Lucas, why him?" "Because Lucas is the only one who didn't accuse me of stealing. He's the only one who never questioned my integrity or my love." "This is about the earrings," Brandon spoke up for the first time, eyes wide. "You're cutting them out of your will over one misunderstanding." "No, Brandon," I answered, locking eyes with him. "I'm responding to what was revealed. That moment didn't create the problem, it showed me the truth of it. Your wife and her sister showed me exactly who they believe I am. I'm just choosing to believe them too." "Mom," Juliana's voice cracked as she clutched the envelope tighter. "We made a horrible mistake, but we love you." "I know you think that," I said, not harshly, "but love without respect isn't really love. It's duty, it's performance, it's comfort, but it isn't love. So that's it." Samantha was crying now. "You're just walking away for good." "Not for good," I corrected her gently. "But things are different now. On my terms, I stood, signaling the conversation was over. You're all grown. You've built your lives with me orbiting quietly on the edges. I'm just doing the same now, building mine with a different center. The protests came, just like I knew they would. Tears from Samantha, raised voices from Juliana, logic from Stephen, but I stayed silent, steady, unshaken. When the chaos finally burned out, I spoke one last time. You once accused me of stealing, I said quietly. And maybe you were right, because today, I am taking something back: my life, and my right to define who I am and what I allow. I walked to the door, Lucas falling into step beside me, saying nothing. At the threshold, I turned to look at the family I had built and lost, and now intentionally let go. Goodbye, I said simply. Take care of yourselves. Outside, the spring sun warmed my face like a quiet blessing. Lucas reached out, his hand light on my arm. Are you okay? He asked softly. I'm free, I answered. And this time, it wasn't just something I said, it was the clearest truth I'd ever spoken. As we pulled away, I didn't turn back to look at the house or the life I was leaving behind. The road ahead stretched wide and sunlit, toward a future I'd chosen with open eyes. There would be no easy forgiveness, no quick fixes or tidy apologies that erased the betrayal. What there would be was this: a clean slate, a new life, one I had carved from the wreckage with my own hands. And if, in some quiet corner of my heart, I took a certain satisfaction in knowing they would feel my absence deeply, and maybe, for the first time, well, that wasn't revenge. That was justice. What I want you to take from my story isn't just the drama of betrayal or the pain of being judged by the ones you love most. What I truly want to share is this: no one has the right to define your worth, not even your own children. Blood is heavy, yes, but not heavier than dignity. I learned that love without respect is just a chain disguised as a ribbon. And too often, women like me spend decades giving, forgiving, staying silent, until one day, something breaks. And instead of picking up the pieces, you choose to rebuild yourself different, stronger, freer. When someone shows you they don't value you, believe what you see. Family should never be a cage. It should be a refuge. And if that refuge turns into a storm, you have the right, yes, the absolute right, to walk away and seek peace, even if it hurts. Now, I ask you, the one reading or listening to this, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you stay, waiting for an apology, trying to fit into a broken mold? Or would you rise, gather what's left of yourself, and start again in a place where no one points fingers at you? Let your answer come from the soul, and may you never lack the strength to choose yourself. May God always bless you with clarity, courage, and true love.